Luo worries that Jinkyun might have discovered the sleeping potion. However, Jinkyun gulps down the drink and tells Luo that he can't be easily fooled. He asks if the bards met the king in person to be able to talk badly about his reputation. Luo claims they risk their lives singing as bards and use the words of people near the king as lyrics. Jinkyun asks who they are, and Luo panickingly tells him that it is confidential. Jinkyun easily concludes that it was the noble's doing. Jinkyun claims he was turned into a trash because of the words of people he never met. He tells Luo to see the king first. Luo exclaims that they always have a trustworthy source, and it is their senior bards. Jinkyun laughs at his seniors, who can only get orders and decide if someone is trustworthy or not. Luo gets mad. Just then, Benny falls, and Jinkyun also sees Maina unconscious. Jinkyun looks at Luo, realizing something. He checks where his knife is and glares at Luo. Seeing that Jinkyun is not affected, Luo follows the words of his seniors to kill the summoner. Luo grabs a knife, and Jinkyun tries to stop him. However, Maina gets stabbed, and Jinkyun immediately disappears. Jinkyun returns crashing to his room and sees a light fading away. Luo gets nervous at what he just did and just sits in the corner, trembling. He remembers his leader's words that this is for the sake of forging a new world. Luo calms down as he realizes that this is the first step toward their goal. He then goes outside and lights up a signal lamp. A group of people notice it and feel pity that they can't see the strong spirit. The alchemist explains that it would be possible to research mana from other worlds. The ignorant mercenary just laughs, saying that they do the cleanup as always. Just then, a single raindrop falls, and the mute old man notices it. He thinks it was just nothing. They continued chatting about the disaster 40 years ago. The old man remembers a woman asking him to sing a song with his beautiful voice. Meanwhile, Luo meets the alchemist and mercenary. They came to collect Maina and Benny. The alchemist goes out first with Maina's body. The mercenary asks how much Luo got as an advance payment. He tells Luo to count again and surprisingly stabs him with a sword. Luo falls and screams, seeing his own blood. The mercenary asks Luo not to get mad because they also need to make things quiet. He also feels bad that La's troop tricked him. They give Luo 20 gold out of 200. He reassures Luo that they can talk again in the afterlife. Meanwhile, the alchemist can't believe that a small girl can summon an amazing spirit. He doesn't care anymore and plans to dump Maina's body in the water. He stabs her to make sure she is dead for good. Jinkyun panics and looks for bandages. He goes out of his room, surprising his parents. His father asks what is wrong. Jinkyun comes back to his room and thinks it is now pointless. He can't go back unless Maina summons him. He grabs the Adek and goes out. His father stops him. Jinkyun gets flustered in front of his parents. He remembers Maina's words about becoming mature by looking at his surroundings. Jinkyun stutters and finally tells them that he is sorry. He shouts his apologies and tells them that he needs to go somewhere. He turns his back on them and opens the door. He grits his teeth, and he is finally out of the house. His parents run to the balcony and see Jinkyun running somewhere. He doesn't know if it will still work or if he will get panic attacks. He arrives at a pharmacy and buys medicine. He bought what he needed and wonders what to do next. Just then, he noticed that he was in front of a lot of people. He gets dizzy and falls to his knees. He squeezes his chest and shouts to be summoned already. People check on him, but he tells them to leave him alone. People call him crazy and they call the police. Later, the police arrive, but the bystanders claim that Jinkyun suddenly disappeared. Moments ago, she was suffocated and looked down again. Just then, he realized there was something that scared him most. If Maina was dying right now. He slams his head on the ground, and people are contacting the police. He brings out the Adek and remembers that it is a link between him and Maina. He also remembers that magic needs things. He stands up and realizes that his life is already a mess, so who cares if it makes more things embarrassing? He starts chanting while people find him weird. Nevertheless, he continues even if he is called an 8th grader syndrome by a nearby otaku recording him. He shouts to open the dimensional gate, making everyone laugh and feel embarrassed for him. However, Jinkyun smiles and the Adek shines brightly. A bright pillar of light appears in the neighborhood, and a dimensional gate appears before Jinkyun. He enters it, and a broken Adek is left behind as he disappears on the streets. Jinkyun returns to the Bard's Hall and discovers Luo, who is severely wounded. Luo asks for forgiveness and asks to be saved. Luo tells him that Maina was brought to the coast. Jinkyung stands and turns his back. Luo cries as he asks for forgiveness. He shouts that he only did it for money. Jinkyung claims he doesn't like people doing anything for money and scolds Luo. Luo apologizes as he bleeds. Jinkyung is frustrated but remembers that Maina would help him regardless. Jinkyung runs toward the coast. Luo can't believe he is healed, and Jinkyung came back without his summoner. The myths and legends from the bard songs never mention an amazing spirit like Jinkyung. Benny slowly gains consciousness as he tries to remember what happened. He discovers the mercenary is concerned about finishing their job. Seeing that Jinkyung is nowhere to be seen, he knows that they are in a dangerous situation. He tries to run away but discovers Maina's lifeless body beside him. He shouts and he gets discovered. He runs away and the mercenary chases Benny. The mercenary throws a knife and the panicked Benny falls. His body instinctively runs on 4. The mercenary shouts at him to run on 2 legs. Just then, he sees Jinkyung, and the mercenary panics at seeing him. He brings out his sword, Shulkin. It turns into a long mana blade and Jinkyung tells Benny to get down. Jinkyung activates his Shulkin knife and slashes the long mana sword, breaking it into pieces. Jinkyung knocks out the mercenary and realizes that Gore is not cool at all. Benny tells Jinkyung about Maina's location, and they go to the coast. They discover Maina, and Jinkyung uses his earth medicines on Maina. The alchemist is glad that he hid after sensing something. He can't believe that the spirit is back when the summoner is dead. He is anxious about what to do next and plans to blame the mercenary. He looks up and sees the mana from Jinkyung's world. He brings out something and lights up a signal light. A huge Shulkin approaches the alchemist's signal light. Meanwhile, Luo realizes that the current bard's songs are false. He wants to see the truth beyond the seas. Just then, he sees a huge Shulkin passing by and concludes that something is happening. On the coast, Maina's wounds are gone, but she is still unconscious. Jinkyung shouts in frustration. Jinkyung thinks there must be a way in this fantasy world. He asks Benny what happens after a person's death. Benny claims that their soul wanders around first until a god finds it. Just then, the huge Shulkin suddenly appears and lands nearby. The alchemist appears and claims he came back out of curiosity. Benny points him out as one of their attackers. Jinkyung tells him to take Maina away. Jinkyung asks why they are trying so hard to kill Maina. The alchemist gets mad at Jinkyung's glare and boring question. He explains that those who are sent to the north are always taken care of. The lords, alchemists, bards, and summoners have banded together while the king is conspiring with the wizards. Jinkyung then concludes that they have to band together to trap the king and make sure that the expeditions always fail. The alchemist gets confused. Jinkyung claims that he has seen for himself that the king helped them. He concludes that they are making the nation fall so they have a reason to kill the king, and that the next bard songs are about the lords saving the country from a useless king. The alchemist is surprised that Jinkyung has said nothing wrong. He brings out his shield weapon. Jinkyung declares that he is in a bad mood and activates his Shulkin knife. The alchemist attacks and Jinkyung tries to fight back. However, his shield deactivates, and he gets hit by the alchemist's attack. Meanwhile, Benny apologizes to the mute old man for intruding. The old man points upwards and they see a bright surge of mana. The alchemist laughs as he claims that his research is successful. Jinkyung recalls losing his strength for a while, and the alchemist's attack hurts. He tries to attack again, but his shield deactivates. The alchemist attacks again, making Jinkyung fall. Luo, who was watching the whole time, knows that there must be a reason. He then discovers the floating Shulkin and remembers that the enemy is an alchemist. He looks around and finds a backpack. Meanwhile, the alchemist ran out of mana and approached Jinkyung with his manaless sword. The alchemist kicks Jinkyung as he laughs at him. He stabs Jinkyung's hand, and he screams in pain. The alchemist then tells Jinkyung that he will chop him up and take him to his workshop. Just then, Luo shouts from the top of the cliff. The alchemist is surprised to see Luo alive. Luo tells Jinkyung that the glowing rocks around him are stealing his mana, and the Shulkin above is storing mana from other worlds. The alchemist asks how Luo knew about it and sees his journal in Luo's hand. He tells him to put it down. Jinkyung stands and asks how much the Shulkin can store. He then activates his mana and claims that he is the only one using his world's mana. He asks the alchemist if he can handle his world's mana. Jinkyung activates his mana, and the Shulkins continue to absorb it. The whole place rumbles as Jinkyung continues letting out mana. The rocks absorb too much and send a huge pool of mana upwards. The shellcan above receives it, and it explodes. Rubble falls from above, and Jinkyung pants heavily. Luo shouts and tells him that the alchemist was trying to create a new life form with the other world's mana. Jinkyung looks up and sees something above. The monster moves violently, and Jinkyung screams about how experiments always create something creepy. The monster falls and looks for his friend, Kaltovia. It's an apology that he can't do something for this world. Jinkyung feels Kaltovia sounds familiar. Luo knew no one called Kaltovia a friend, and he left to read more of the alchemist's journal. Jinkyung tries to talk to the creature, but it just roars and attacks Jinkyung. Jinkyung dodges and attacks, but the creature easily dodges. It sends Jinkyung flying, and it follows up with more attacks. It continues attacking Jinkyung until it generates flames in its mouth. The creature then lets out a powerful fire breath. Jinkyung brings out his shellcan knife, but the creature dodges it. Jinkyung is annoyed at its agility. However, he realizes that the creature suddenly got stronger. He then thought of doing things for real instead of copying moves from an anime. He strengthens his body, and the creature leaps forward. He lets out a fire slash, but the creature dodges. Jinkyung goes missing from the creature's side, and he appears on its side. It attacks again with the fire breath, but Jinkyung dodges. Jinkyung increases his speed and is able to damage the creature. The creature gets mad, and Jinkyung tries to attack again. He slashes off the creature's limbs easily. The creature tries to breathe fire again, but Jinkyung attacks with a fiery thrust. The creature explodes. Later, Jinkyung and Luo catch up to Benny. He asks to bring out Mana. Mana gets laid on the ground as Luo apologizes. Jinkyung tells him to shut up because it is not over yet. Will Jinkyung be able to revive Mana? Comment below if you want the next part. See you in the next video.